Welcome to the Outdoor Biz Podcast, where each Tuesday, your host, Rick Sayes, gathers around the mic with outdoor industry entrepreneurs, brand leaders, founders, and enthusiasts to share stories from the backcountry, the startup files, and the retail aisles. Rick's guests offer actionable advice to land your ideal industry gig, grow your outdoor career, or plan your next big adventure. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. And now, here's Rick.
Welcome to episode 345 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. This week I'm joined by rock climber and fellow podcaster Steven Dimmitt. Originally from the Pacific Northwest, Steven left his career as an engineer in early 2020 to move into a van full-time and pursue personal goals in his passion of rock climbing. For the past 2.5 years, he's also been making the Nugget podcast, traveling around the country interviewing world-class climbers to tease out the habits and routines that got them where they are today. Steven and I talk about some of that inspiration, how we got into climbing, and of course, podcasts. Welcome to the show, Steven.
Hey, Rick. Thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, I'm honored to chit-chat with you. This is going to be a fun convo. I'm sure, anytime I talk with another podcaster, my guests probably go, oh, God, or my listeners probably go, oh, boy, here we go on the podcast, geek out. So sorry, everybody, but we're probably going to geek out.
It's what we both love to do. I've already been asking you about your setup this morning, so yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
excited for this.
Yeah. It usually happens that way, but we'll talk a little bit about climbing. And let's start off with how you were introduced to the outdoors. How'd that come about?
So my dad was always a work to live, work to play kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
He grew up without money, and so I think it was important to him to make enough money that his family didn't have to be stressed out the way that he was as a kid. And, his values really came through in his career and his lifestyle. He became a lawyer, and then, that was just a job that I don't think he loved his career. He didn't mind it. He was good at it, whatever, but it afforded him all of the things that he wanted to do in his free time. And so, yeah, that was what we did together. We would, I started snow skiing when I was like 3 years old. We'd go on family ski trips every winter, and then backpacking in the summer, very seasonal. They had a ski boat. We'd go out on the river and water ski. Eventually got into mountain biking when I was a teenager. And yeah, it was always just a part of life with family. And I don't think I loved any of it, honestly. I think I really fell in love with the outdoors once I discovered climbing because, there was a really strong reason to be out there doing the thing, and I started to appreciate all the things that come with an outdoor lifestyle through that lens of like, there's this thing I love that I want to spend all my time doing. And wow, it brings me to some pretty cool places. This is actually kind of awesome,
So your dad didn't climb?
My dad didn't climb. He climbed a tiny bit when he was, I don't know, in high school or early college, I think. That was totally disconnected from me. I didn't grow up climbing with my family. I was introduced to it later when I was 18 years old by a friend of mine.
Got ya. So you guys did more of the traditional family outdoor recreation adventures?
Totally, yep. Snow skiing, backpacking around Washington. I grew up in Washington State, so, backpacking in the Cascades and hiking to lakes and bringing our fishing rods and catching crickets and catching fish in the mountain lakes and things like that. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. How'd your dad get into it?
Into the outdoors?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think he was drawn to it when he was younger and just started to explore with friends. He was in the Army. I'm sure he had some exposure to, rucking or backpacking or whatever they do. Right. I actually don't know. I've never talked to him about this, but I think there was some allure there, but it was, he and my mom and the rest of my family, I think of them more as like the jack of all trades sort of thing. They love the seasonal recreation, and I'm the weirdo. I'm the one that just became obsessed with a single activity,
And how'd you get into climbing? What was you remember your first climb?
I do. I went to a friend's birthday party when I was a kid, but that was just a one-time thing. I didn't climb again, for another decade after that. I had no concept that climbing was a sport, that it was an activity, that it was something you could do all the time, But yeah, my friend Andrew Crawlard took me out when I was 18. I had just graduated high school. He took me out to Leavenworth with my best friend Nathan and I, and we just went bouldering. We just went to this little traversing boulder in Leavenworth and just kind of monkeyed around and got really pumped. And, I failed on like a V1. I had no idea what I was doing. I can't remember if I had climbing shoes. I think I did, but maybe I borrowed them
Rentals
from my dad.
maybe or something. Yeah.
I can't remember, but I don't know why. I just loved it. I thought it was so interesting. And Andrew, I've always been really drawn to things. For people that don't know my story, I studied engineering. I'm definitely wired that way. And I've always been really drawn to things that are, systematic and have measurable ways to get better and to check things off and, things
solve
like
the
that.
problem kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And climbing had that, I remember Andrew just grabbing holds and being like, yeah, there's people. I was thinking about going to Western Washington University where he went to school. And he's like, yeah, there's people at the Western gym that can climb V9. And I was like, what would that look like? And he like grabbed a foothold and then grabbed another foothold 8 feet away and was like, it'd be like going from this to this. And I was just like, whoa, people can do that. Who knows? We were probably completely off, but it just captured my imagination for some reason,
Yeah, the engineering piece makes a lot of sense, actually, because you've problem solved. A lot of folks, I think, get into it because of the problem solving, but also the engineering and architecture, I think, too. You have the angles and all that stuff that you solve for. So that could be. Who knows?
Right. And there's a sense of accomplishment that's always felt important to me, or that's been the piece that has really addicted me to this thing versus, like I love skiing, but you have a really amazing powder day and it's like, that was a great day, but I don't really have anything to show for it, in air quotes. And I don't know why, but that piece just resonates with me so strongly, like having a goal. Okay, I did this climb. That means I might be able to do this slightly harder one over here that I've had my eye on, and it just feeds itself.
That makes sense. Do you remember your first time on a rope?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, it was in college, definitely. My second year of college, I became a staff member at the climbing gym and started route setting. So I'm sure I had done some of it just in that gym at Western Washington University. And I think I started to branch out. I went to Mount Erie a few times, which is nearby in Anacortes. I really got into sport climbing when I was about 23. I'd been climbing for 5 years, 22, 23, and started climbing at Equinox, which is a little crag in the middle of nowhere. It's near Cedar-Woolley in Washington, up in the mountains there. And just totally, it was like a light switch moment, just got so into it and went all in because it's just this beautiful overhanging crag and the routes looked impossible. And then, you start actually being able to do some of them. And it was so much fun.
Right. Have you ever done any mountaineering? You ever bag any peaks, up or near, any of that kind of stuff? Did it parlay into that or no?
Not really. No, the big snowy mountain thing, it never held that allure for me. I was like, that looks cold and it doesn't, I really like technical rock climbing. I really like the movement of it. And I did try to summit Mount Baker once.
Wow. Okay.
We got shut down by weather. It was a really fun trip, but we got shut down by weather on summit day. Ended up pivoting and doing a crevasse rescue day, which was really cool. I mean, if anyone listening has been in a crevasse, they'll know. Anyone who hasn't, it's really hard to imagine how otherworldly it is to drop into a crevasse. It's like an alien landscape.
Yeah. Well, climbing on the
really
ice,
cool.
Mountains on ice and stuff. I remember I did Rainier when I was about 50, and it was just wild. I mean, it was probably, I don't know if it was the highest mountain I've ever done, but definitely the most technical. And I was part of a Jansport climb, so it was very fun. But all the technical aspects of it are just crazy. I mean, it's very cool.
It looks, I don't know, it just looks like a lot of slogging up a steep hill to me. I'm sure I don't mean to diminish it.
Well, it's like,
I
felt like I was climbing a ladder all day, all morning. You climb a ladder for hours and then you just stumble down.
I love just grabbing a little hold with my fingertips. It's like, how exactly do I need to grab this thing? Just those sensations of feeling the rock against your skin. Yeah, I love that.
Did you do gymnastics as a kid? Does it come from that maybe? My sister was a big gymnast.
I wish I had. Honestly,
I
didn't really do anything up until age 18 that served me later in my climbing.
Gotcha.
I was I played soccer as a kid. I'm sure I have some general fitness from that. But then I got really into baseball, which was fun, but baseball doesn't really serve you in anything later on in life, except for like being good at eating peanuts or something. I don't know.
Peanuts and hot dogs, right?
Peanuts and hot dogs and spitting sunflower seeds and trying to look cool while you're doing it. I don't know. I mean, yeah, the hand-eye coordination maybe could have been helpful if I'd gone in a different direction, but yeah, I mean, it was a total life pivot for me finding climbing. I mean, it totally changed the way I thought about myself. It made me way more interested in the outdoors, and I had kind of been drifting towards a really conventional lifestyle, I guess, up to that point. And then, it was like discovering this other option, like this other fork in the road, like, oh, wow, I could actually, seek out these amazing experiences and adventures and have a life centered around rocks and mountains. And that actually seems really interesting.
And then it went off the rails.
And then it went off the rails and consumed my life.
I'm totally kidding. So let's tell our listeners about the Nugget Climbing Podcast. What inspired you to create a podcast, first of all?
Yeah, so I studied engineering, like I said, and ended up in Bend, Oregon. I moved there for Smith Rock, for the rock climbing there. Lived there for about 7 years. And just ended up, I worked in the outdoor industry for a couple of years, and then I ended up working in aerospace and was just kind of living in a cubicle, just doing the 9-to-5 grind. And, kind of modeling my life, in a similar way to what my dad had done, honestly. Just, I've got a good job, I can afford to live in this cool place, and I get to play on the weekends, and I get to train at the gym after work. And it was okay, but obviously now I've pivoted to something that's way more fun. But I was stuck in my cubicle all day, and I just became totally addicted to podcasts. And I wasn't necessarily listening to climbing podcasts. I listened to some, but, I just became, I guess it was mentorship. Like I just started to listen to all these different shows. I know that you've listened to Tim Ferriss. He was
I was going to say, what were some of the ones you listened to? Is his one of them?
Yep, Tim Ferriss was probably the first one that really captured me and just started to actually, these conversations I was getting to tune into started to have real impact on my life. And, Tim was just providing this amazing mentorship with his guests, and I was learning so much from them. And Armchair Expert is another one that I love and listen to a lot. And that kind of tapped into more of the interpersonal side and really trying to understand, like, who is this person? And what are they trying to get out of whatever they're into in their life? Like, where are they finding their meaning and their purpose, and what led them there? And it just started to occur to me that there was this opportunity to have that kind of depth and that kind of mentorship in the context of climbing, and talk to these amazing climbers who all of us can learn so much from. Because I always had all these burning questions. I'm not a naturally good climber. I always felt like I had to work really hard at it. I had to really struggle for each lesson and for each, little.
Sounds like you were pretty fit though, from growing up and doing outdoors things. So you were pretty active and fit. So you had that going for you. That had to help.
Yeah. You're right. But I mean, I just, and maybe this is a false comparison to make, but I always had the perception that I was working a little bit harder than a lot of my peers and friends and just not progressing as quickly as them. In hindsight, it's like, oh, I was probably doing a lot of things wrong and putting energy into the wrong places. But I was just always fascinated by that. Like, why is this hard? What do I need to do to progress? And, I was climbing at Smith all the time and meeting all these really good climbers, and just noticing that there was a lot of discrepancies between what the increasingly like mainstream advice was, in training for climbing and things like that. And then what all these amazing climbers were actually doing. Like, most of them were just climbing, but they were bringing a lot of intention to their climbing and doing some really smart things that were making the difference, from my perspective. So it just made me want to sit down and talk with them. And it was actually, again, Tim Ferriss. I was on a flight down to San Diego to do a work trip, and I read Tools of Titans on my Kindle, and it just hit me like, man, if this sort of thing existed for climbing, that would have been life-changing for me a decade ago, and I don't know why, but it just kind of clicked. I had been thinking about, I don't love being an engineer. I don't love being in a cubicle. What else can I do? Like, do I want to go back to school and become a teacher so that I have a better work-life balance and can travel in the summers? Or do I want to become a climbing coach or a trainer? And none of those things felt quite right. And then reading this book, I kind of had another light switch moment where I realized, like, no, I think my role is to be the person asking the questions, because I always have these burning questions that come up for me when I'm listening to other interviews. And I feel like the other climbing podcasts out there that I was listening to, they were great, but they never quite got to the burning curiosities that I had. And it just felt like, I think I can make this show that I at least would love to listen to. It's worth giving it a try. I had no experience with radio or anything like that. And I'm totally introverted, so I didn't know if it would be something I could pull off, but it just felt like something worth going for.
Yeah, that's awesome. Interesting too, little segue here for all you folks listening that are thinking of starting a podcast. This is exactly the path that a lot of podcasters come from, right? They listen to these podcasts and then they realize that they have a burning, and I think Tim Ferriss talks about this a bunch. You have a burning itch, whatever it might be, go for it. Because there's good chances that if you like it, there's at least 1,000 other people that like it. We'll talk about 1,002 fans in a minute, I'm sure. But, it's interesting that you followed that path. I wonder how much of that subconsciously might have been driven by listening to the Tim Ferriss show.
Oh, I mean, it wasn't subconscious. It was fully conscious. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, something I skipped over was another one of his books, The 4-Hour Workweek. And I listened to that on Audible. I remember I was in my cubicle taking a break from podcasts to listen to this book. And I went into it fully skeptical. I did not think of myself as an entrepreneur. I associated entrepreneurship with tech and tech startups in Silicon Valley. And I wasn't aware of any strong pain points in my life, like that's always the recommendation is what's the thing that is bothering you in your work, and then how do you solve it, and then create your own business around that. But I mean, it planted so many seeds for me, and that book, The 4-Hour Workweek, got me to start really challenging some of those assumptions that I had about what it meant to be an engineer and whether or not I was, stuck being an engineer because I had arbitrarily chosen that when I was 18 years old and didn't know what else to do with my life, So yeah, I really started to seek other options, and the climbing, the podcast was not the first thing. I tried several things actually that were failures, but also started to open me up to all these other possibilities. Like I built my own Amazon business just as an experiment to see if I could make some passive income. And that gave me so much confidence that, oh, wow, there are resources and tools out there to learn how to do just about anything. And if you know where to look and if you're willing to do the work, you can learn how to do something. So when the podcast idea did come up, I think that experience served me really well. Like, yeah, if other people have figured out how to do this, I can figure it out too. Yeah, I'm sure it gave you confidence, and also, like you say, the ability to go find the information. It's out there now these days. Yeah, and it seems like you have a burning desire to learn. You're very curious. Where does that come from, you think? I've thought about this question a lot. I think I've always been very, very curious about the things that I am fascinated by. Like, for example, there was always something for me. As a kid, it was Legos. I was so into it. And then it was video games, which was a less healthy outlet for that. And then ultimately, music, and then climbing. But I've always had something that I was just passionate about or obsessed with, and always felt really hungry to explore, to learn. And it's interesting. It's actually, I think it's really unfortunate that our school system doesn't do a better job of cultivating that. I really felt like, for me at least, I kind of had to rediscover my love for learning in my 20s after it was like systematically squashed out of me, Yeah, totally.
Like death. Exactly.
Yeah, school just taught me how to play the game. I was really good at cramming for tests and test taking, and just kind of coasted through most of school.
And you probably grew up in an age where you didn't have the shop class outlets. At least my youth, we could go to wood shop or metal shop or, do something else to get out of that test taking, learn for the test stuff. Now that's all gone.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I got to experience a little bit of that through my engineering degree. My degree was actually really hands-on, which was great. I built a little,
but that wasn't in high school. That was probably in college, right? No high school.
Totally. Yeah. Exactly.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think it's always been there, but it's kind of come back with this fervor in my later 20s and early 30s, just realizing, wow, when you are fascinated by something and you get to choose where you put all this curiosity and energy, it's actually incredible. It's incredibly fun, and it's just amazing. I mean, that's the thing that's so special about the age that we live in is there's information everywhere, and you can learn how to do just about anything if you have an iPad or a laptop and internet access,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, anywhere. Yeah. And you don't have to be at home. You could do it, like you say, out and about. So let's flip to the content of your podcast. How much of your content or episodes are about climbing versus the self-improvement piece?
It's probably like 50-50, I would say. Both in the micro and the macro. Like a lot of the time, I'm basically, the show is about mentorship. I'm just trying to sit down and extract as much learning as I possibly can and mentorship from each and every guest. But each person is an expert on completely unique things. Each person is an expert on their own life and their own path. And sometimes it shifts way more towards climbing and performance and training. And other times it's way more about the person and their story and their path through life and what they've learned along the way. And, how the rest of us can relate and learn from that. And I'm always talking to climbers, so there's always that context. But yeah, I would say about 50% of the time we're geeking out about climbing, and then the other half of the time I'm talking to a climber, but we're not talking about moves. We're not talking about specific routes or training or things like that. It's just about the person and whatever else they're doing.
Does a lot of it focus on self-improvement, how they improve themselves, how they get better at whatever it is, or maybe intellectual stuff, their brain, smart, intelligent? How do I keep my brain growing and moving and learning?
Right. Honestly, it's kind of everything, because I think that reflects my own climbing journey. At first, all I wanted to learn about was training. How do I get my fingers stronger? That's all I cared about. And over the years, you just start to realize, I think this happens no matter what you're interested in. You could experience this through a professional pursuit, a career pursuit, whatever, or art. But I think eventually you realize that, okay, if I want to keep improving my craft and honing it and growing in this thing, I kind of need to sort through some shit, and I kind of need to become a better human,
Yeah.
I need to work on, like, my ego is getting in the way, or my insecurities are getting in the way. And I'm endlessly fascinated with how many of those sorts of things and how many of those stories rhyme with one another. I might be talking to someone who has a completely different life experience to me, but I can always relate it to my own struggles, Yeah, so a lot of it's that. A lot of it's just like, how do we do this human thing? Like, how do we enjoy life more? How do we improve our self-talk? We're often our own harshest critics. Like, how do we have a happier, more fulfilled life? How do we give more to other people? All these sorts of things. I'm always interested in that because it's just connected to everything else we do.
Mm-hmm. And it's connected to every one of us. We all have those things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I always struggle with the self-talk thing, and then also the distractions. Like, I'll learn something and then I'll go back and see something else that looks like, oh, that's a better way. So I'll go back and dive back into that, where I should be just doing the thing, not continuously learning about it. I got to shut that down all the time.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking to a guy that's probably had like 60 or 70 episodes about training for climbing. So I can absolutely relate to that. It's like, yeah, the balance is interesting because I've learned so much through all these conversations that have helped me refine my approach. But it's so important that you don't do exactly what you're describing, that you're not just, like a squirrel.
Exactly.
Right? You have to pick something and do it long enough to see if it works, and then you can kind of refine it over time. But yeah, there's always principles at the heart of it, and you start to notice these patterns.
No, I totally agree. Yeah. So back to your episodes, they're pretty long too. I think that just is a function of the type of conversations. Do you record them all in one session, or do you come back, take a break, and come back? How does that work?
Yeah, I almost always record them in one session. I edit the podcast myself, and so I tell my guests, feel free to take a bathroom break, feel free to pause and collect your thoughts, whatever you need to do. But I love it. I mean, honestly, for the first year, I had some internal conflict about the length of my episodes because it was different. It was different from what anyone else was doing, at least.
You listen to Tim Ferriss, though; he goes long too. So it's
exactly. So I was used to that, so it seemed totally normal to me. But as I started the show, a lot of climbers were like, "Damn, dude, your episodes are so long." But I've been trying to teach and coach my listeners to expect that, and I've found that now that it's just normal, it's just what I do. A lot of people resonate with it the way that I always did, where I mean, for me, it's like, imagine anyone listening to this, if you have something that you absolutely love doing, especially if it's something that you want to get better at, imagine being able to go out for a beer with one of your total heroes and just sit and pick their brain for 3 hours and get to ask them all your most burning questions and have a chance to prepare for the hangout beforehand and have all these great questions ready. I mean, that's, to most people listening, I'm sure that sounds amazing, what a treat. And I get to do that every single week. And through this podcast, I get to share it. And it's so much fun. I mean, if the conversation isn't jiving, I'm not trying to have a long conversation just for the sake of it.
Right. You give it the time it needs. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I heard a great quote from somebody. I had a podcast coach actually for a while helping me grow the business. And I was asking him about this, is this okay? Should I put a maximum, should I cut him off at 2 hours, and have that be my max, or how should I think about this? Am I losing listeners potentially? And he just said this simple quote. He said, "There's no such thing as too long, just too boring."
That's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. I really connected with that at the time, and I've really, held on to that.
Yeah. I don't really have a limit on my show. We just go as long as we go. And sometimes I think I tailor my questions for the audience a little more than go after all the personal stuff. I'm going to ask personal questions too, but it's more that kind of limits the time. But I remember I've had a couple episodes go as long as an hour. I mean, you just let it go. It's natural. It is what it is.
And it flies by, doesn't it?
It totally flies by. And I think if you cut it short, it's obvious and it compromises the quality, of the conversation.
Right. I think so too. And I mean, again, there's amazing 20-minute podcasts out there. Everyone's just doing their own thing, and I love the long form. And early on, I mean, I had one good friend of mine sit me down, and she was like, "Hey, I think I love what you're doing. I think this could be really amazing and successful, but I think you need to keep it shorter. It'd be awesome to finish an episode on my commute to work." And I thought about that for a long time, and ultimately it was just like, okay, that's just your commute to work. Not everyone has a 45-minute commute. So this is kind of just this funny, selfish request that you have because you want it to be convenient for you, but everyone's schedule is different. And what I think she wanted was the same information and the same depth of conversation in a quicker package, and it doesn't work that way. It takes time to let the conversation unfold. And something that I always did before, and I think people are getting used to now, is just listening in chunks. You don't have to listen to a 3-hour conversation straight through. I kind of listen throughout the day as I'm going on walks and making meals and things like that.
Yeah. And I used to go through the same thing early on in my show. I didn't try to limit it, but that 45-minute mark was always in my head because of the commute time. But then, after a while, after these great conversations I was having that went longer, I thought, you can always pause it and come back. It's not like it goes away. You listen to it whenever you want to. You take a break, you get bored, you listen to another one, you come back. It is what it is. Everybody has their own thing. So I think you're spot on. Let the conversation flow.
Let it flow.
That's it. Yeah. And I love the about piece for your podcast mentions asking the right questions. And I've listened to a couple of your episodes. I think you really do ask the right questions. Do you have a process for finding those questions, or do they just come to you?
Thanks for that. First off, that's really kind. I mean, it's a combination of things. I have a Google document on my Google Drive that is a collection of questions. And this is another Tim Ferriss thing completely. I totally stole this from him, but
I did too.
Yeah, I think of myself as a collector of questions, and anytime I come across a great one on his show or another podcast or whatever movie, YouTube video, I'll write it down. But honestly, these days I don't draw from that list very often. And I really prefer to, I guess my philosophy is this. My philosophy is that everybody is interesting if you ask them the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
so it's philosophy.
That makes sense.
It's this kind of juncture. There's my curiosity, the things that are relevant to me, the self-serving questions. And then there is this person, what they're excellent at and what makes them most interesting. And it's, I try to sit back and first off, I try to get to know everybody a little bit beforehand. I try to have a pre-interview and chat with them. I find that really helpful. And then it's just me sitting and thinking like, what is most interesting to me about this person? Like, what do I really want to know? What really fascinates me about them? And I also really lean into asking self-serving questions because I find that if I keep it really personal and have the context of like, here's where I'm coming from, here's how this thing seemingly relates to me, and this is why I'm curious about it, and this is why I'd love to hear your thoughts, the guest. If I do that, it's almost always relatable to somebody,
Yeah.
Like I said before, I mean, so many of our experiences rhyme. So there's someone listening, and I think with all that kind of context was the stuff that I really resonated with as a listener when I was binging podcasts in my cubicle. So yeah, that's my approach. I mean, it's pretty organic. It's just me collecting a lot of information about the person, getting to know them a little bit, and then just sitting with that for a couple weeks and really letting my curiosity kind of build and just trying to pay attention to which directions that's going in.
Yeah. Well, and you nailed it, the organic piece, but it's also pretty clean. I mean, it's a pretty clean, simple way. It's not forced. It's not, you're not making stuff up just to keep the conversation going. And I think that helps the flow of the conversation if it's just clean like that.
Yeah, totally. I basically always have the same amount of prepared material, the same number of questions. My outline's almost always the same length. And then the conversation length is just however long it takes to get through all that stuff,
Yeah.
So sometimes we crank through it in an hour and a half if the person's really, like sometimes you get a really analytical, really smart person who's very concise with their answers. And then sometimes you ask one question and the person talks for an hour and it's fascinating, So yeah, that's kind of my approach. And then I do find it really helpful to edit the show. So I'll go back and I very rarely even change the content. Like usually what you hear is my experience doing the interview, but it's just tightened up, and I might cut out one section where I had an idea and it just didn't really lead to anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I find that really helpful as well.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I don't think I've ever cut anything out. I just cut out the ums and ahs and those kind of things.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting. I think I go back. I keep circling back to the fact that we both listen to the Tim Ferriss show a lot, and that must have just influenced because we have a similar flow, a similar process. That's interesting to me.
Yeah, he's a pretty smart guy, turns out.
Yes, he is. Yes,
I mean,
he
he's
is.
also, I appreciate him so much because he's so generous.
Yeah.
He's so generous. Like,
Yeah.
Anyone listening to this, you can just type in Tim Ferriss podcast setup and just buy his entire equipment list. That's what he's used to build his show to like 700 million downloads or whatever. And he thinks about all this stuff and he just shares it really freely. And I love his philosophy about that. He doesn't have this competitive, what's the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, he's not concerned about giving it away. It's just like
he has this abundance mindset.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Like anyone listening can build their own great podcast, and that's going to lift everybody up instead of being threatening to him. And I love that. I've tried to model that same philosophy as well.
Yeah, and I go back to his initial, I forget what the blog post that he had, but I go back to the initial one. He does another one about asking questions and interviewing. There's some they go off on Larry King. It's just fascinating, all the things. And then he did that huge video recently. I forget which podcaster did that with him, but all about how to do a podcast. I think that's like the Bible of podcasting. It's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think I listened to the audio version of that.
Yeah. I'll find that link to it in the show notes, but yeah, it was awesome. And so you're all in on podcasts, sounds like. Why do you feel they're so valuable?
For me, it goes back to that idea of mentorship. There's so much we can learn from one another. And we have this amazing opportunity with modern technology to share that and to not have to all learn the same lessons the hard way over and over again. I mean, it's such a gift. And I don't know. I mean, for me, like I was in my engineering cubicle and didn't have a lot of social connection. I had kind of honestly done it to myself. I'd kind of cut myself off because at the time I was probably obsessed with climbing to an unhealthy degree. And I was just working and training. And
you could actually do the work and listen to a show.
I could at times, like some of my work I had to focus, but I had a pretty cushy job there for much of my time there and was just, doing mindless things in spreadsheets and things like that. And, yeah, I could talk about that more, but yeah, I was very fortunate to be able to listen while doing a lot of my work. Yeah. And, the connection piece, I mean, really, I was really surprised listening to these long form interviews at how connected I felt to the two people talking, the host and the guest. And it actually gave me a surprising amount of social energy and fulfillment. And for me, it was just really fascinating. Like, okay, I think this is a really clear clue that this is a part of who each of us is as a human. Like this is a human need to connect and talk. And we're just not getting as much of that as we used to, most of us. We're isolated. We're spending a lot of our time in our jobs at work, and we're just living in a culture that's faster paced. Every single year, it's just our attention spans get shorter. I find it so fascinating. Like I won't even read a whole Instagram post if it's longer than about 2 inches long on my screen, but I'll listen to a 3-hour podcast and be bummed when it's over, So yeah, but it really goes back to mentorship for me and that idea of having this amazing opportunity to sit down with my heroes and bring so much intention to the conversation. It's really different when you're sitting down to record something, like both of you are just fully there. You're fully present and you get to really dive in, and then being able to share that. I mean, it's just such a gift that every guest is sharing with all of us, to share who they are and what they've learned and to pass all that on. So I just think it's the coolest medium.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think it's your voice. I've always said your voice is your most important superpower. And I think, as you say, we're all moving and isolating and doing things so quickly. We don't get to sit down and have these long form conversations with one another where we can listen to each other as we're talking. But then the other piece of it on the podcast is you can eavesdrop on that conversation.
Right.
And you get the inflection and the passion and the frustration and all that comes out in your voice. So I think you nailed it. That's awesome. Very cool. What part of podcasting do you love the most? Do you love the conversations, or you geek out on the editing? What's your deal? What's your jam?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I actually listened to your conversation with Emily Holland before doing this, just to get a feel for your show. And she's a friend of mine, and I just was laughing.
She's great. Cheers to you, Emily.
Cheers to you, Emily. And I was cracking up when she was she has like a loathing for the editing process. She hates it so much. And she's like, she said some throwaway comment, like maybe someone out there, some weirdo likes it. And I'm kind of that weirdo,
Yeah,
you know,
well,
like
I'm number two. Yep.
Totally. Yeah. Like I that engineering thing, like I could sit down and meticulously go through a spreadsheet for hours, and I can totally get locked into the editing process. It's not my favorite though. I think the conversations, those moments in conversations when you feel like you're in this flow, you know, you're so present that you lose sense of time. 2 hours go by and it's just like a blink. And you're just connected to this other human. I mean, it's a really special thing. It's a pretty intimate thing, honestly, to record a podcast. I sometimes get this almost vulnerability hangover afterwards. You know, I really like that phrase where you come out of it, and on one hand, I feel energized and I want to go socialize with a bunch of people. And then part of me wants to take a nap. I'm like, well, I'm exhausted, you know?
Yeah. Emotionally, I think depends on the conversation. It can tax your brain.
Right. But yeah, I think those moments in conversations when you're getting into something fascinating and you're both fully there, that feels really fun to me.
What's your editing process? Just not to go too deep into that, but is it a simple process, or is it very time consuming? Use any of the whiz-bang software that's out there now, Descript and all that stuff?
Yeah, I don't use Descript. No, I still do it. I don't know if this is the old school way. I'm not sure. I use Logic Pro. I started out using GarageBand. I used GarageBand for my first probably 50 episodes. And then I switched to Logic Pro, which is, for people listening, that's like the souped up version, the paid version of GarageBand, essentially. And I just go through the entire conversation minute by minute and manually make the cuts. I do the crossfades if need be.
At real speed or speed it up?
Yeah, at real speed.
Wow.
Yep, I listen to the whole thing, and it's tedious, but I find it really helps, you know. I've also gotten a lot better at it, you know, like if it's a 2-hour conversation, it might take me 4 hours to go through and edit the whole thing. And I thought about outsourcing that for a long time because it was a pain point. It's definitely one of the most time-consuming parts of the process for me, and it's tedious. But I get so much out of it. It's my chance to really... Yeah, I mean, it's not just that. It's like, it's my chance to really internalize the information and the conversation. Like, I want to know my content better than anybody.
Well, and you can actually listen to the conversation that you just had, whereas opposed to while you're, like right now, you're always thinking of, as the podcaster, the host, you're looking at the list, you're looking at the time, you're looking at all these things. But if you can go back and listen to what you just did, I've never thought of that. That's got to be pretty powerful.
It's powerful. And I mean, that's, you know, first and foremost, I want to become a better rock climber. That's really why I started this thing. And the fact that thousands of other people now get to benefit from this information and use it, that's amazing to me. But I really want to take the information and internalize it and use it in my own climbing and training. And so that's my chance. The edit is my chance to really do that. It's my chance to go through it minute by minute and make notes and think about things. And I think it's really helped me become a better interviewer as well. You know, you can't hide from your own verbal tics and awkwardness and fumbles. You can clean it up a little bit and hide it from everyone else, but you hear it first and you're like, okay.
And how hard is it to stop doing it again, right? You go back to the next conversation and you're doing
it. I know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But it's good. I mean, there's an element of surrender that comes with that too. You know,
right.
Like I've listened to so many hours of my own voice that you just are kind of forced to let go of perfectionism. And that's something I struggle with. So it's been really helpful in that way. It's also really helpful going into a conversation to know I'm going to edit this later. I'm going to have the last say on what stays, and I have that control. It helps me. It helps take a lot of pressure off for me.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of freedom just to wander. Yeah, that's cool. We're going to take a little break and give some love to our sponsor, Audible. You know those long drives to visit family over the holidays, or maybe to a trade show since a lot of us are flying less these days? I just want to crush that travel boredom. So I flipped to Audible. Audible is like having a library in my phone. Whether highway mile markers are blowing past like a white picket fence, or I'm racking up more frequent flyer miles, Audible helps me pass the time. I can get lost in a great book, and next thing you know, I've arrived at my destination. Get your free Audible trial today. Sign up at ricksays.com/audible. There are over 180,000 titles to choose from. Go to ricksays.com/audible and start your free trial with Audible today and crush that travel boredom. Now, back to the show. Do you have any shows in the queue you can talk about?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I typically have anywhere from 3 to 6 episodes recorded at any given time. For people listening, I put out episodes every Monday. So I've got a backlog of, I think, 5 episodes right now and another interview this week. But the 2 that I'm most excited about are upcoming interviews. One is with Lynn Hill.
Oh, nice.
Who is obviously a total climbing legend and a huge hero of mine. And she invited me to her house in Boulder to talk. So yeah. I'm really excited for that. That's about a week away.
Great.
I'm intimidated, but excited. And then another one is
she puts your climbing shoes on the same way you do.
Totally.
When you go interview your heroes, remember they put their shoes on just like you do.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, and climbers are so amazing. They've all been so welcoming and friendly, and I've never been made to feel less than by anybody I've ever talked to, which is incredible. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that one, and then Dave Graham. He's another total climbing hero. I'm so excited to geek out with him. He's a really eccentric, like interesting personality. He's got tons of energy, so I think it's going to be a really fun conversation. And we haven't locked down a recording time, but he said yes, he'd love to do it. So yeah, we're trying to line that one up.
Excellent. Anybody on your list that you've been trying to get that you still would like to get? Someone who's either challenging or a hero of yours, another hero, something like that?
Yeah, honestly, the person that is probably on the top of that list for me is Jim Collins.
Oh, yeah, really good.
And obviously he's a total badass climber, put up some of the hardest routes at the time in El Dorado Canyon, some of the earliest 512s, cutting edge stuff at the time. I believe he did the first ascent of Psycho and Genesis. But just a fascinating character. You know, I've listened to a lot of his other interviews. He's been on Tim Ferriss, obviously. I'm sure you know that. I've listened to his interviews multiple times. For people listening, he's a business author and has written some really amazing books. And the way he thinks about things, I just have learned so much and been left with so much to think about after listening to everything he's ever done that I've come across. But he's a hard guy to track down because he's so focused on his work. So I've talked to his team a couple times. He's got this amazing team, really friendly people. And he's just in his cave right now with his head down doing research. So
that's why he's so good at what he does.
Exactly. So if it ever happens, it's probably a couple years away, but I'm going to keep trying because he's a really inspiring guy.
Yeah. I haven't read all his stuff, but I've read a lot of his books. He is fascinating. I didn't realize he was as prolific a climber as he is, but yeah, I kind of came at it from his book side. Amazing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he's in his 60s now, I believe. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how much he climbs these days, but back in his heyday, he was one of the best in the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Interesting. Are there any shows in your brain that you'd like to see somebody produce or publish? Are you another show you're thinking of?
Other podcasts?
Other podcasts, yeah. Topics or?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, one thing, I guess I have 2 answers. Like one thing is that I just love the ideas that people are coming up with, and some of the shows people are making are awesome. And I'm excited about that. I love to, I do some podcast coaching. I love to help people bring their idea to life. So I'm always excited about that. And then for myself, I'm really excited to try to do some mini series that are parts of the podcast, you know, maybe having one guest on for 6 to 10 short episodes and really doing a deep dive, whether that's into a specific facet of climbing performance, mindset, or something like that, or totally unrelated. You know, like I talked to Ron Kauk probably a year and a half ago, interviewed him, and I've stayed in touch with him, and I'd love to do like a Sunday morning coffee with Ron series, you know, where and a 10-minute episode comes out on Sunday morning and you just get to sit and have coffee with Ron Kauk and hear about some of his philosophies and stories. And
Yeah, it's a great
So,
idea. Love that idea.
Yeah, I've got a few ideas like that for miniseries that I'm excited about.
Very cool. Love it. In addition to climbing, what other outdoor activities do you participate in?
Basically nothing else. I pretty much only climb. But you know,
do you camp though? Like, you go at a crag, at the base of a crag?
That's the thing. I mean, I'm always I've always been. I live in a van full time, so
so you're always camping.
I'm always camping, exactly. So I'm a climber, and that's the only thing I do. But I probably do more hiking than most people who identify as hikers. You know, like I'm always out in the mountains hiking to these cliffs and boulders and things. And then, I camp every night in my van. But I mean, I've only slept in a tent probably once in the last few years.
Wow, good for you.
And I guess so.
Well, you're still out. You're not sleeping in a tent. That's awesome.
Right. I mean, I would prefer to go do the thing and then come back and relax and sleep.
Well, I'm sure the bed in your van is more comfortable than sleeping on the floor of a tent. So
exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very cool.
But that's the main one. I mean, the amazing thing about rock climbing is that there's so much variety within the sport.
Yeah.
You know, I think when most people reach the end of their backpacking season, they're pretty excited to switch gears. And for me, I just do that within climbing. You know, I'll switch from sport climbing to bouldering. I'll switch from bouldering to training inside and trying to get stronger for a goal that I have. Or I'll take a break from high intensity and go do some easy trad climbing in the mountains and just have some adventures, you know. And you can do, or just as simple as changing rock type that you're climbing on. It completely refreshes the experience. So I love that. I can make these pivots and keep things really fresh and interesting, all within one sport.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Yep. Do you have any advice or suggestions for folks wanting to get into the outdoor adventure, lifestyle, business kind of thing, or just get into the outdoors? Kind of a long, double-ended question there, but
right. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't thought about this question in the sense of just getting into the outdoors. I'll start with the industry thing. I've been thinking about this, and I think it goes back to what you said about podcasting. Like, if you don't have, I think, only get into the outdoor industry if you have a specific thing that you really want to do. You know, I think just like in podcasting, asking the question, I think I want to make a podcast, what should it be about? I think that's the wrong question to ask. You know, I want to be in the outdoor industry. What do I want to do? It's like, well, being in the outdoor industry just for the sake of being in the outdoor industry, hopefully it's changing and it will be a really amazing, fun, positive place to work. But in my experience and talking to a lot of friends of mine who've worked in the industry, a lot of the times it's not.
It can be a job. It can be a job.
It's a job, and you're probably not going to make as much money as you could. So you can't, you have a job. It's not as fun as you thought it would be. All of a sudden, you're kind of burnt out on the outdoors because you spend your work time focusing on that, and you don't have enough of the, you're not setting up your lifestyle in a way where you can go on these adventures on your vacations and things like that. So it can be great, but and hopefully it's changing. But I think that's just something to be thoughtful of. On the flip side, if you do have something that, you're like, why isn't anyone doing this or making this or talking about this? I mean, start paying attention to that feeling and what it would take to be really good at that and create a really good thing that other people would also enjoy.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind that, whether it's a product or a guidebook or whatever it is. There's still plenty of white space there. And then on the job thing, I think you have to go into the whole thing with the eyes wide open, right? I mean, I've worked in it for years, but there are times when it was a job. I mean, I was at the desk or I was in airplanes traveling around to go meet other people to sell them stuff. But it affords you so many other opportunities because of all the connections you make. And you're selling recreation gear or talking about recreation gear or living about it at the end of the day. So even though it is a job, it's still pretty damn fun.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. That's really cool. Yeah, I think I probably had a uniquely bad experience, and I won't say any companies' names. But
that happens.
I worked in the outdoor industry and then got into aerospace. And when I first was in the outdoor industry, I thought I had found my dream job, but it was really eye-opening to move into aerospace. And by the way, I do not care about airplanes. I was not a kid that was infatuated with aerospace in any way.
Yeah.
I just found myself in that industry, and I enjoyed. It was so much better. I really enjoyed that job, and the work culture was better. So that was really eye-opening, and it just kind of showed me like being in the outdoor industry for its own sake is not the goal.
Right.
find a great
agree.
company,
Yeah.
but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, you still got to find your spot. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of outdoor jobs that aren't that great, or outdoor companies that you may not want to work for.
Right.
It's just like any other industry, but yeah, you got to find your spot. Exactly.
Yeah.
So this question I ask everybody: what's your favorite outdoor gear purchased under $100?
That's such a tough question. I mean, I guess I do have some that come to mind, and I just don't know how relevant they'll be to anybody listening to this. But
there's 1,000 people out there that will love it. I could promise you that.
Great. Well, I'm a rock climber first, they're very specific pieces of equipment that have served me in rock climbing. The first one is a small portable hangboard. It's by Tension Climbing, and it's called the Block. And I actually have a new sponsor called Frictitious Climbing that makes a really great product that's really similar, so people can check those out. But it's just a piece of wood with some climbing holds carved into it, and you can throw that in your pack. It weighs nothing. You can attach a sling to it and loop that around your foot and start to warm up your fingers just using this little wooden implement. And if you're hiking really far to a rock climb and there's no good warm-ups around there, or if you're trying something really difficult for you and it's cold and you want to, keep your fingers warm and firing between tries, that thing has been, I use it all the time. I always carry it with me to the crag.
How big is it?
I use it. It's small. It's probably
the size of a paperback or a keyboard, or
it's probably 4 inches wide by 6 inches long and about an inch thick.
Okay, pretty small.
Yeah, it's just a little block of wood, and you do one-handed at a time with this thing. And I use it for training too. I've got kettlebells in my van. I'll attach weights to it and pick them up to train my fingers. Yeah, I love that thing. I use it all the time.
Okay.
And then I'll give you a second one. So night climbing, that's a huge thing now, especially for bouldering. Going out at night. And the thing that has made all the difference for that is these USB powered or USB rechargeable LED lights. You can buy them on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. You go out at midnight because it's cooler. Temperatures are better in the summer, for example. You want to rock climb, and you get 3 or 4 or 5 of these lights, and you can just light up the entire bouldering area. You want to be mindful of wildlife and make sure that you're not screwing with any local wildlife, but it's okay to do this in a lot of climbing areas. And it just is so much fun to be out there. It feels like you're in a competition final or something. You got the lights shining, lighting up the boulder, and so some
That's
LED
cool.
lights. Those have been really fun, and they're probably $20 or $30 a piece. They're pretty reasonable.
Cool. Send me the links. I'll put that in the show notes. Awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, I mean, and it sounds like you're a reader. What are some of your favorite books? A couple of your favorite books.
Yeah. So I already talked about this one, The 4-Hour Work Week. Again, I was super skeptical when I picked it up. I did not think it was relevant for me, because I thought of myself as, I had this fixed mindset around my career. I chose to be an engineer. I'm locked into that career path, and that's probably not going to change. And I was so wrong. So I really think that book kind of cracked me open in this amazing way, and has directly or indirectly or both, it's led to basically everything I'm doing now.
I feel the same way. I think that book kept me away from Tim Ferriss for a long time, because you just look at you look at that book. Oh yeah, come on, right? Really? So
exactly.
But then you dig into it, and then you get into his podcast, and he's just so much more than that.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, again, it was really it was the book that really got me to start challenging some beliefs and assumptions that I didn't even realize I was holding on to.
Same.
Yeah. So that's a standout one. Another one I love that I've read it multiple times is Essentialism by Mcewen. I really struggle with the overwhelm that comes with all the opportunities that we have. all the things that we could be learning about, could be working on, et cetera, et cetera. There's so much.
That's the distraction part, right?
Right.
That's what happened to me anyway. Yeah.
Right. Like 15 years ago, as a new climber, I couldn't find any information on training. And now I feel like we're all just standing in front of a fire hose, just getting blasted, you know?
Right.
And
that's right.
And the difficult part, and this relates to work, to everything, is that focus piece and just figuring out like what is actually important here, like what is actually going to make me happy to focus on. And yeah, that book, Essentialism, I think has been tremendously helpful for me in thinking about that and just focusing. And then I'll give you one last one.
Cool.
This is my most recent book that's had a big impact on my life, and it's called 4,000 Weeks. And it's basically about letting go of this tendency or this feeling that we have of needing to be on top of everything. Like, for example, trying to live in inbox zero all the time and always trying, getting stressed out whenever I have unaddressed emails in my inbox. Basically, the author says, you're never going to be on top of it all. Right. So just stop trying. Just give up, and just learn to sit with the discomfort of having things that you haven't finished yet, that are undone, that are on your to-do list, that haven't been addressed, and just let go of that feeling of like playing whack-a-mole, like, oh no, another thing popped up. I've got to put out this fire. And it really resonated with me and my personality, because I was always trying to figure out how to get more done, how to be more productive. And it's been tremendously freeing to adopt that philosophy a little bit.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to pick up those two right after we hang up. It's sound like we're a lot alike that way. I can't have so many things going on, trying to find more time, and just it's not going to happen. So yeah,
right.
Figure it out. And is there anything else you'd like to say or ask of our listeners?
Yeah, just check out the Nugget Climbing Podcast if you're interested in climbing. And I'll point you to a specific resource. I built this page on my website called Top Lists, where I break down all my favorite episodes by category. So if you're interested in climbing history, you can click on that category and you can find Ron Kauk and Peter Croft and John Long and just some of these legends of the sport. On the flip side, if you're interested in high performance and some of the best climbers in the world, you can find those people, adventure stories. If you want to just hear some laughs, I broke all that out. So if you want to check it out, thenuggetclimbing.com is my website. And if you click on episodes, you'll find the Top Lists page and you can explore from there.
Great idea.
Yeah. And then Instagram, that's the only other one. Yeah, at the Nugget Climbing on Instagram. That's where I put all of my social media energy. And that's a great place to reach out if you want to DM me there. I'm pretty active on there, and I'll probably see your message and be able to get back to you.
Cool. Perfect. Well, we'll link to all that stuff on the show notes. And I hope have you been down climbing in Bishop? Maybe we have to definitely connect for a beer when you get down here.
Oh, I'd love to connect with you. Yeah, that was my very first outdoor rock climbing trip, was to Bishop, California.
Oh, cool.
In the winter. I went down in December with some friends of mine from college and just climbed in the buttermilks. And
special place in the winter, isn't it?
Yeah. It's probably fair to say that it changed my life, that first trip.
Very cool.
And I think I went back for, the next 6 winters or something. So Bishop is really special to me. I haven't been there in a couple of years. That's actually not true. I went last winter for a few weeks. Yeah, I love it there. I'll be back sometime soon for sure.
Right on. Well, look me up. We'll go grab a beer at the Rambler Brewery. Mountain Rambler
Can't
Brewery.
Wait. Sounds great. All right.
Well, thanks. It's been great talking to you, Steven. I look forward to more conversations and more connecting.
Thank you. Can I ask you a self-serving question?
Absolutely.
As I love to do.
Yeah.
So it was really fun to prepare for this. I listened to some of your other episodes, and it's just, I want to ask you this. How long have you been doing this?
I think I've been doing this for about 5 years. I've been struggling with the date because I was still listening to Tim Ferriss. I had a 45-minute one-way commute, which is how I stumbled on podcasts, and Tim Ferriss got me through. It was a tough job that I had to go to every day. But it's either 2015 or 2017, and up to 300. You're going to be episode 350, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, so that's amazing. I'm at about 2.5 years and 130 episodes.
Right on.
So I
Keep
wanted
going.
to ask you, thank you. I wanted to ask you, like, do you have any advice for me? Like, what has allowed this thing to stay fresh and interesting for you? Mm-hmm. Do you have any recommendations as far as, making sure that I still love doing it in another 2.5 years?
I think keep doing what you're doing. I think it sounds like you get a lot from the conversations, which is what drives me. I kind of came up with the idea, flat out copied the Tim Ferriss show, to tell you the truth, because as I was listening to him talk to all his, Silicon Valley connections and all that, I thought, I could do the same thing in the outdoor space. And I had gotten laid off from that job, and I was stumbling around, and I just picked up a mic. I had a mic, and I had a Zoom recorder from some of the photography interviews that I'd done, and here we are, 5 years, however many years later, and it's just super fun to talk to folks like you, because I get a lot out of the conversations as well, but then also for me, sharing those conversations with others, and I think you'd like the same thing, share with the climbers, because people can learn climbing, or they can learn about books or whatever it is, and just keep it up. I mean, and if there's pieces of it that you don't like editing, ditch them, hand them off. There's so many places these days or so many tools to make that process easier. Get those things out of your way so you can do what you love.
Oh, I love that. Thanks.
Yeah. And keep it up. You have a great show. I've listened to a couple episodes, and all the things we talked about today. I think you got a lot of people to talk to in your future.
Thanks. Yeah. There's my I keep a list of potential guests.
Right. I do the same.
And I think when I first started, I wrote down like 80 names or something, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just came up with 80 people I want to talk to.
Yeah.
My list is like 3 times longer now. It's just gets longer at a way faster rate than I can possibly get through these interviews, so it's really fun.
Yeah, well, if you're like me too, each conversation brings up another 3 people to add to the list.
Right,
totally. So yeah, well, keep up the good work, and I look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks, likewise.
Right on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Be sure to visit our website, theoutdoorbizpodcast.com, where you'll find show notes with links to everything we talked about and more. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or spread the word and tell a friend about the show. That would really help us out too. Be sure to tune in every week. And thanks again for listening to the Outdoor Biz Podcast with Rick Sayes.